When the mailbox no longer shuts. When your credit report is 1,000 cuts. When investment dreams become nightmares and clerks at stores admonish with glares. You can't afford that, can you? When vacationing days are far and gone. When pets disappear into the night. That's the time, the witching hour, when all your dreams your bills devour. It's all gone. A nightmare, it seems. But is it? It doesn't have to be. Because on this night, so dark and weary, the boys on the microphone are making merry. Like three ghouls around the bowl, full of lost balance sheets, lizards, and toads. Stirring briskly bubbles, charge cards, maxed and filled, insurances never obtained, forgotten wheels. On this night, so quiet and slow, like a horrible dream. It's the Stacking Benjamin Show.
Live from Joe's mom's basement, it's a special Halloween week episode of The Stacking Benjamin Show. I'm Joe's mom's neighbor, Doug, and on today's terrifying episode, we're bringing on a funeral director. Wait, the funeral director is going to make things less scary? Since when is that a plot line? Do I have to write this stuff myself? All right, well, today we'll help you pull back the cobwebs on your final expense plans with St. Paul-based funeral director Scott Mueller. In our headlines, hey, finally, here's scary. Bad property casualty insurance. What, we're helping with that too? Okay, we'll talk homeowners insurance and umbrella policies and, quote, doing better on today's episode. And in our TikTok minute, we'll share one treat that really seems like more of a trick when you think about it. This one's actually scary. That's good. And now, two guys who make Frankenstein and Dracula seem well-adjusted. It's Joe and O-J-J-J-J-G.
Happy day before Halloween, stackers. I am Joe Saul-Sehy, average Joe Money on X or Twitter, and my partner across the card table from me. And I say partner because he's got on the straw cowboy hat this particular day in Texas. It's Mr. OG. How are you, cowpoke?
That is not why I thought you said partner.
It's a little late to be wearing a straw hat, but it is 90 degrees out, so
90 degrees in October.
Still summer.
Sounds like North Texas. Don't know what you're going to get. Just come back tomorrow.
It's pretty hot.
We can still bring the heat. We're going to bring the heat today, OG, because we're talking.
Your like fake Texas accent is awful, by the way.
It is horrible.
Just go back to Texarkana or whatever your accent is.
Hey there, partner. Don't you know?
Try to put a twang on the Wisconsin.
Yeah. Yes. Milwaukee's best.
We're Milwaukee's best. No, I think they can do better. Fairly certain they can do better. I've always thought that's a mislabeled beer. Just
no truth in advertising there, is there?
We talked about Prego when I learned enough Italian to know what Prego means. You know what Prego means?
Please.
It means you're welcome. Like, just what are we going to call it? Well, when they get done eating it, we'll just say, you're welcome. We put this on we should call this the Prego podcast today because we're bringing Scott Mueller on. This is actually a big time of life, OG, that in all the years of doing the podcast, we have never talked about pre-planning your funeral expenses, about these emotional times. And man, this is I can verify with all the stuff that's happened in my family this year, that's an emotional time, and pre-planning, probably something you want to do.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have anything to add there. It doesn't sound like a really fun time to be like thinking through all of your options. You're like, I'm out of decision making. Just,
Right.
you know, you're not going to make a good one when you're stressed. And when we do financial planning, we don't really put this in the plan, but we talk about the fact that you're not going to make good money decisions when you're emotionally charged. So think through some potentially not so fun situations like health issues or disability issues or sudden death of a spouse or something like that. And let's game plan that financially. So at least that's already on the shelf. And I think that's what you're talking about here is let's have that plan on the shelf so that you're not trying to mix good financial decisions with really highly emotional times.
The best person I could think of to talk about this was Scott Mueller. I've known Scott Mueller for a while. He's actually a guy in my strategic coach group, OG. And what I love about Scott is a few things. First thing is he's second generation funeral director. He's literally grown up with funerals in his family. Second, he's talked a lot as he gets older about how his motivation around being a funeral director has changed. I'm sure he and I will talk about that because he's very, very open about emotionally what it's like to be there in those moments. But third, this guy has the best sense of humor. He shows up with all of these amazing entrepreneurs in the room the last time we were together. And he has a shirt that I thought in the middle of summer was a Christmas shirt because it has a bunch of wreaths all over it. You know, think about, take your average, I'm sitting on a beach, hypothetically in, where the hell are you while we're recording this, OG?
Way far away.
Yes.
On an island.
Yes. And I've got on that tourist shirt that has just a bunch of print on it. I'm totally tourist, but it's a bunch of what looks like Christmas wreaths. But you look closer and there's caskets behind every single wreath. This dude has this crazy thing that is funny to him. And it's only funny when you really, really look at it to the rest of us.
But hold on, because somebody at the shirt company thought, we're going to sell a ton of these.
I know.
We're going to make money off of a casket shirt. What?
I'm going to change into the shirt that he got me the last time we were together because we've been friends for a long time. And I have to tell you, this shirt is another shirt like that, where it's funny to me and it's only funny if you know who it came from. So we'll have that later. Scott Mueller coming up next, a guy who knows how to plan, what the issues are. And, you know, you hear all these things in the media about funeral directors taking advantage of you. I'm sure he's going to address all that. But first, we have some sponsors who make sure this is free for everybody. So let's hear from them. And then we're going to talk to Scott Mueller. And I'm super happy to welcome this guy to Mom's Card Table. He's the guy people are dying to meet.
Ooh.
Scott Mueller's here.
Ooh, that is...
You've never heard that joke before.
That is painful to hear. I've heard it so many times. I prefer not to hear it again. However, Joe, you put a certain tenor into that voice that makes it acceptable.
I don't know. But you know, the better the dad joke, the worse the dad joke, the better.
In fact, these are becoming quite popular now, where you can tell these jokes and have everybody moan, but they're writing them down, so that they can tell them again.
Well, and a fabulous one. You and I have been friends for a while, as I said in the intro. You were upstairs talking to Mom, so you didn't hear it, Scott. But you and I have been friends and acquaintances for a few years, and we're at Strategic Coach together, which we talk a lot about on the show. But you were nice enough to send your friend Joe this T-shirt, and I'll show it to people watching on YouTube. It's better to be seen than viewed, which is funny. What I like about this shirt, Scott, is that nobody gets it until I tell them my funeral director buddy gave it to me.
That's right. That's right. It's a very limited edition. If any of your viewers or listeners want one, it should be available in our souvenir shop, but I don't know that will be. But
and that's how different Scott Mueller is. He has a souvenir shop.
I do not. But if I did.
Do we exit the last time through the gift shop as well, Scott?
Always. Everybody needs another pair of dentures,
Right. Two things I'd like to highlight about this conversation before we begin. First of all, this topic is super important to me, Stackers, because both my dad and my mother-in-law died in 2024. And I saw firsthand two things. I saw firsthand how a lack of planning, and in some places bad planning, creates a lot of dysfunction and also just a lot of scrambling. I also saw firsthand on the other side of my family just how much pre-planning matters. And as a guy who was a financial planner for a long time back in the day, I would tell people to pre-plan, and Scott, you and I'll get into this in a second, but the ROI, I'm like, is the ROI there? Is it not there? And I would overwhelmingly change my view of maybe to, oh, hell yeah, in a heartbeat. That's the first thing. So this is an important topic to me, and much more important than it was 12 months ago. But second, this has also been very important to you in the past, but I also feel like on a personal level, Scott, this is very important to you. You also had a family tragedy, I believe, in your family, and you've also had a recent health scare.
Yep. And there's nothing like that to all of a sudden change your priorities and change your focus immediately. In the past 3 years, I found out I had cancer and COVID on the same day. That was a bad day. And then my sister Debbie died, and my mom died, and then my other sister Connie died, and then my brother-in-law Doug, who was married to my sister Debbie, died, all within that time frame. None of us are immune from this, and none of us are immune from the emotional transaction that none of us can calculate, because we've never really allowed us to think about it, because for most of us, it is unthinkable to give up somebody that we love, but it is going to happen. It's best to have a little preparation for it, and to certainly have a conversation with the people that you love about what you would like to do.
I've got to imagine, holy, the cancer diagnosis and COVID on the same day. You talk about a bad day. That's understatement of the year. But between that and all the death lately, like even for a guy, so you're not even first generation funeral director. You grew up in a funeral director family. I have to imagine just all of this happening in the last 3 years, Scott, has really hit home much more for you.
It has. And then as I age, Joe, I get in more personal demand as I get older, because my friends, their parents are dying, and so they want to have me in there. And so all of this becomes much more personal for me, much more emotional for me. I am committed to this profession now in a different way than I was when I first came into it. When I first came into it, it was about achievement and making a mark and that type of thing. And now it's all about, how can I help people relieve the stress and the anxiety that comes with grief. We've really worked hard on that, and we continue to work hard on it.
You have a book on this topic, and certainly I'm not here to be Barnes and Noble and to sell books. And I know you don't really care about selling books, but I do like the topics in the book, and I want to organize our discussion. So stackers, when I'm talking about the book, I really want to, and we will of course have a link on our show notes and talk about the name of the book and stuff at the end. But you start off with the fact that, so for you, this is personal. You want to make sure that people feel good. But you present right away, Scott, the thing that all of our stackers are thinking right now. We don't trust you.
Yeah, that's right.
We do not trust you. Why don't people trust the funeral director?
There's a pretty rich stereotype of funeral directors. You know, people come in expecting an old man. I guess I follow that stereotype now, with a dark suit and a stovepipe hat and a tape measure trailing out of his pocket. You know, that's kind of.
He's generally taller than you are, Scott.
Oh, and his fingers are thin and cold. And yeah, the stereotype is very, very rich. And over the years, it has been filled with some of these stories that unfortunately are true, where people had been taken advantage of by funeral directors and kind of put the screws to them. Now, that has really subsided tremendously because of the scrutiny that we're under, and because of the internet that is there, and because of the Federal Trade Commission that passed a rule that said, here's how we are to behave when it comes to pricing and things like that. That happened in '83. For all those reasons, anytime there is a rich stereotype of somebody, and it generally isn't positive, the lack of trust is huge. And so you have to give people a reason to feel that you are trustworthy and that you can become a trusted advisor.
You said that you personally, I don't remember the exact phrase, but you got to see a lot of your competitors in action.
Yeah.
I don't remember exactly what your role was, but you said even looking at that, yeah, there's a shyster out there, but it makes the stories even bigger because there's so few of them.
Yes. And there really are. Generally, people are really cared for pretty well by the funeral profession. Now, there's different elements of that. And what's happening in our profession is happening in the dental profession and in chiropractic and in eye clinics and in anything else where venture capital firms and public firms are coming in and they're acquiring funeral businesses. I can speak to this personally because I sold my businesses to one of these companies. I worked for them for 12 years and I was in an airplane for 3 weeks a month. The opportunity came back for me to buy the business back. I've never been happier because I think a profession like this, where you need to think about compassion and not responsibility to shareholders, is really important.
So how do we avoid, and I know we're not going to be able to get it all, Scott, but what are some of the biggest gotchas that we can make sure we avoid and to make sure we're not working with one of the few unscrupulous people out there?
There are a couple of marketplaces like Florida, Arizona, where there are a lot of retirees that have settled in that area. And in those marketplaces, especially, there are cremation providers that will put up on billboards at cremation for $7.95 or $6.95 or something like that. Don't go to those people. You should, if you go to the least expensive in a professional kind of setting, there is some compromise that is being made. And any compromise that is being made is usually not in your interest.
What's an example of a compromise in cremation? Because it feels like your ashes no matter what, Scott.
Yes, you are. But the biggest question that people have that they're almost afraid to ask is, hey, I want cremation, but how do I know that the ashes I get back are the ashes of the person I love?
Oh, man.
So we go over, in fact, that's a conversation I have with every family that chooses cremation. I go over that with them, and I always see somebody's head nod about that says, yes, make me feel better about that. Because there are situations that happen from time to time that make you really question that. There was a crematory in Georgia that hadn't paid their natural gas bill in months, yet they were cremating bodies for quite a few months.
Oh, my.
There was quite a mess there, forensic mess. I won't get into the
That
details.
math isn't mathing.
It
right?
doesn't math well. And they told me there'd be no math on this, Joe, but that one I can work out. So there are instances like that recently in Colorado, where Colorado doesn't have any licensing law, or didn't. Now they are going to have it. They didn't have any licensing law regarding funerals, funeral homes, and funeral directors. That there was a low-cost provider who was not taking care of the bodies in the way that they should, and they were decomposing in their facility.
Oh.
Now, yes, everybody wants to save $1, but at what expense do you want to save $1? So I always look, if you're in a market where it's being advertised as very, very cheap, look at that with a jaundiced eye. Second thing to consider is, do you want to work with a family-owned funeral home? Is that important to you or not? I maintain that it is, because I think that we have a greater responsibility to our community than a publicly held or venture capital owned funeral home.
Well, you know what a venture capital company is trying to do. I mean, we have that. You were talking about hospitals. Our hospital, Scott, just went bankrupt, and there's a federal investigation of this company because they go into small communities and take all the money out.
Yep.
And now a bunch of my friends who are nurses and orderlies, and here in this small town I live in Texarkana, they don't have jobs anymore because of venture capital. Sometimes gets a bad rap, but a lot of times rightly so.
Well, I think a lot of times it's rightly so, because I have a friend who sold his business, not a funeral business, but he sold it to a venture capital firm, and he took 2 dips. And 2 dips are the sale, the roll up of the sale of that group to the next bigger venture capital firm, and then they did it again. And so with each sale of that, the culture of the business, the leadership of the business changes. He's selling a commodity, that's easy to do within that environment. But in the funeral profession, where people are depending on a reputation, and these firms like to buy a firm that has a good reputation, they don't change the name, so they give the appearance that nothing has changed.
That was exactly what I was going to ask, because my understanding was that you could see, Mueller Memorial as an example, And this still is a venture capital backed
Yes.
thing. It's a big corporate entity.
Yep. Yep. In fact, we have one very active company that is out there acquiring, and they've acquired in our market, but they're not good at acquiring a full service funeral home. There's one that had a great reputation. Within 2 years, they are half of what they were before.
Wow.
And it's very tough to do that in the funeral profession. You got to be almost intentional about it.
So you just straightforward ask the question, are you family owned?
I think that's worthwhile because I think it's important to know who is that person accountable to. If it's somebody comes in and asks me, who are you accountable to? I say, I'm accountable to you. But if it's owned by a company like previously when I was owned by the public company, they're a good company, but my responsibility was to them. And their responsibility is to the shareholder. It's ultimately not to it is to the consumer in a roundabout way. But
Sure.
as you know, public companies have to provide increasing earnings per share in order to move that stock price up. Our business is a tough business to roll up into that kind of an ownership situation. So I think it's important that it's family owned.
I'm glad you touched on the billboards. I'm glad you touched on low cost provider. I'm glad you gave us the insight into family versus corporate owned. I want to talk about another thing that I have not studied enough, and I'm sure our stackers haven't studied enough. And this is if we decide on burial, the casket. And I've heard, tangentially at parties and stuff about the casket. But as a way to get into this, I think the best way to get into this topic is in a related industry. And this is Scott, comedian Brian Regan, talking about selling refrigerators. And I'll tell you what this has to do with caskets in a second.
All right.
Needed a refrigerator for our new place, and I've never bought a refrigerator in my whole life. I went into the appliance store. There's like 900 of them lined up. There's a salesman there. What's this guy supposed to say about refrigerators? Well, you have this refrigerator right here. This keeps all your food cold for 600. You've got this refrigerator. This keeps all your food cold for 800. Check this out. 1,400 keeps all your food cold. So this guy's working me on this one. I've never seen a guy work so hard. This one is a very nice refrigerator. It has a meats drawer. And what you do with that, you would put meats.
But I could just imagine I'm hanging out with you, Scott, and you're like, this puts your body in the ground for 800. This puts your body in the ground for 1,000. This is for 1,200. How do we make a good casket decision?
Well, I'm going to be the first one to tell you that all caskets do the same thing. They do.
Keep your body cold underground.
They provide a conveyance from place of death to the place of burial. I'm also going to be the same guy who tells you that it does not matter what you buy. It matters that you say goodbye. And that's really the heart of what's going on. The old days of us shoving a family into a room with 25 different caskets and saying, hey, pick one. And if you feel lucky, pick two. That's what we used to do to people. And nobody had any knowledge of it. And so the knowledge was taught to us by the casket supplier. And so some of those caskets were sealed against the entrance of air and water. Who cares about that? Some of them had cathodic protection so they wouldn't rust so quickly. And some of them, ridiculously enough, had a 50-year warranty. Who's going to,
It only made it to year 48. We
That's
dug Grandpa up.
That's right. And the FTC said, if you're going to make a claim that is going to be sealed, you got to be able to back it up. So they backed it up with this warranty, which was ridiculous. You can spend from very little to very ridiculous, but it really isn't about that anymore. Right now in my marketplace in St. Paul, Minnesota, about 70% of people are cremated. And so a casket isn't even a decision that they talk about. There are still marketplaces where the cremation rate may be 30 or 40%. So a casket is still important. All it comes down to, I'd always tell people is, you know what you like and you know what you can afford. That's really what you should use. Nobody else who comes to the funeral has enough knowledge about that product to determine whether you scrimped on it or you overpaid on it. They're just not going to know.
You do make a good point about this. Well, you just made a good point about it. And you really emphasize this in the chapter on this topic, that the casket truly is for the living and really for the viewing. And if somebody was a big Detroit Lions fan or Minnesota Vikings fan, like having the Vikings casket really just is the last time when you're viewing them, to see their personality.
Yeah. And we've had people that have made their own casket, or brothers that have made the casket for somebody. I'm all for that type of thing, as long as I get to inspect it and make sure it isn't going to embarrass us or anybody else that comes to the funeral.
Well, let me ask you about that. By the way, let me cut you off there because, brother's making the casket. What about like a casket from Costco or some other place? Like, do you go, no, can't bring that in here?
Nope. I'm obligated by the Federal Trade Commission rule. I'm obligated to accept that. I can't charge the family a handling fee. I can't
Not
do
like
anything.
A bottle opening fee if I bring in my own bottle of wine?
Nope, no corkage fee. But when you think about it, you think, well, I'm not going to show up to a restaurant with a steak and say, hey, cook this for me and, take that off of the bill. So the casket in the past has been a very big part of the profitability for a funeral home. So those things were marked up multiple times. Now it isn't important anymore. The markup on that has come down dramatically. And the manufacturing, quite honestly, has gotten wider. I buy direct from the manufacturer in Indiana, yet I can still buy Chinese caskets that are shipped from China here and pay less for them than I do buying directly from the company in Indiana.
Let's
Boy, I'm peeling back all the layers here.
No, it's great. It is fantastic because if our stackers, Scott, are anything like me, they know so little about this. And I think part of the reason is that we think that we're not at the end of our story, right? And I think the biggest misconception, I had a friend in the early days when I just switched over to financial media, a guy named Adam Baker, who did a documentary on this whole topic. And he said, as they were talking about dying, everybody thinks you die at the end of your story, which is not true. You die right in the middle. So many times he talked to people in this documentary, they were on their deathbed and they knew they were going to die in the next 24 hours. And they're talking about some bill that's coming in 2 weeks and somebody needs to take care of that, or some family trip that's going to happen in 3 months. And all Adam could think of is, who cares? You're gone. We don't really process that. So I'm hoping that all of our stackers die a long, long time from now.
Yep.
But Scott, it comes for all of us, which is why I'd love to spend some time talking about this pre-planning, because it happens in the middle of our story. It sneaks up on us. My dad, this time last year, was having some slight health difficulty, not even slight. He was having some disturbing health problems, but not at the point where we thought he'd be gone now. And then very quickly, thank goodness for him, thank goodness for all of us, he's gone fairly fast. Talk to me about pre-planning and how it works. What exactly are we pre-planning if we decide that we're pre-planning? What are kind of the things that we're pre-planning? And how does that look if somebody decides to take on the task of pre-planning versus wait and let family members do it?
I'm assuming that we're talking about getting the funeral director involved, because that's how I look at it. Because there's two sides to our business. There's the at-need side, which clearly there's a death that's taken place and they need us right now. And that's a different element. And then there's the pre-need side. And that pre-need side are people that are planning for this. And they're either doing it for their parents or they're doing it for themselves. It's pretty easy to get information out there. You can go to funeral homes' websites and you can get a pretty good feeling for the funeral home just in looking at their website. If their website gives you information about this and they're free-flowing about it, then they're going to be like that when you meet with them in person. All it takes is a call to them, an appointment, and you sit down. All the options are put out in front of you, and you just systematically, the funeral director is very good at this. The funeral director is very good at putting questions in front of you that narrows your choices and gets you down to what you would like to have done. And then
what are some of those questions? What does that look like?
The biggest one is, do you prefer to be buried or cremated? Yeah. And right now, this is something we should talk about, but not in the context of this question. But right now, for us, for our funeral home, there are 5 different ways of disposition. It's not just burial and cremation. There are 3 others, too, that people can consider. And so it's just being aware of that and making sure that your family is aware of that choice. So that's number 1. Number 2 is, how do you want to be remembered? What kind of service do you want to have? Now, a lot of people will say that, hey, I'm gone. Doesn't matter. Just throw me in the hole, put me in the backyard. I've heard all this stuff, the hefty bag, all that kind of thing. That's not what we do. These are people. These are people. We love the people that we love, and we're going to say goodbye to them in a dignified way. So how do we do that? So at our funeral home 5 years ago, no, more like 8 years ago, we redid our funeral homes and put in a bar in our funeral home. First funeral home to have a bar in it. You know, when I started working here for my dad, I used to start by cleaning up the smoking lounge where everybody smuggled in the bottles of booze. Now we just made it institutionalized a little bit. It's really, really great because people come in, and instead of being uncomfortable about coming in, signing the book, saying hello to the family, and then getting the heck out of there, they'll say, well, maybe we'll just have one. Maybe we'll just have a glass of wine. And then what happens there is, like all situations, social situations that involve that, is you feel more comfortable. You feel looser. You're willing to talk with other people, and you hear the person's story like we used to do a long time ago. But we don't do that because we're all so busy right now. So that bar thing has really helped us get people to connect. So that's one of the options that you could do. What kind of reception do you want?
Can I speak to that?
Yeah.
Just a second with my dad's death. I told a couple people this because people kept saying, this has got to be really hard. And I said, you know what I love? As I get older, the thing that I love about either the viewing or the memorial, the time that the family's together, I get to see all these people that I love because we always come together for weddings, funerals. And even though it's around a funeral, that part, you know, at first seems a little bad, but then you think about it. I love the fact, Scott, that for whenever a loved one dies, I take a break from the madness, and I'm not thinking about me and my selfish stuff. I'm taking some time where me and all of my friends are really celebrating this person's life. Like, how badass is it to have this time when I get to spend a day spending time thinking about this person and telling stories and sharing stories about, like, it really is neat. If you think about it, it really is in a lot of ways fun. I remember in my dad's memorial service, which we had a couple of weeks ago, we laughed. Never laughed so hard. We had,
What a great life, though. What a great life that it leads
we
to
had
that.
maybe 35, 40 people stood up and told stories. My dad's cousin wrote a poem to my dad about how my dad moved from Michigan to Ohio, and it made him sick that my dad became a Buckeye. And even though my dad's dead, he still is angry.
Some things just can't be overcome.
No, it's horrible, but it was great. It was so great. So to your point, making people feel comfortable and sharing, man, we don't, I mean, on one hand, it sucks that we do it after they're dead, but the fact that we do it at all, I think, is such a blessing. It's so cool. So to have the bar function that maybe loosens this up a little bit, so helpful.
And that isn't for your dad. That is for everybody there.
Oh, good point.
You hit the nail on the head, where death is a really inconvenient thing. It happens at the wrong time. All of a sudden, I got to change my plans. That's the best thing about it, is that you have to lean into somebody else and suspend your own schedule and say, okay, I'm going to change what's going on with me in order to reach out to somebody who's hurting right now. And we learned this painfully during the pandemic. There was a period there where we could only have 10 people in the building at one time. Most families have more than 10 people. So we had to have 10 people in, clean everything up, usher them out, get 10 people in. It was horrible. It was a horrible way to say goodbye to somebody that you love, because there is something about being around a group of people for a shared experience that gives you an endorphin rush. It is good for your head. This is why people still go to concerts when you can listen to music on headphones, much, much better quality than if you go to a concert. But going to a concert is fun, and you get the energy of the crowd. You do this with a funeral as well.
I interrupted you though for that. You were on a roll. There's other things that we're considering.
Yes. So on the pre-need thing, so the biggest thing is a form of disposition, whether it's burial, cremation. In our case, it could be water cremation. It could be green burial. It could be natural organic reduction, which is human composting, which is coming to a state near you soon. And we've helped people do all these different things. In addition to that, it is about, hey, is there going to be a religious element to this? Is there going to be a faith component to this? And for most people, even though most people now do not have a tight relationship with their church, that's very much the way it is. I'll have a conversation with somebody and it always starts off with, well, we're not religious, but it's not like we're without faith. We believe, and okay, well then how are we going to talk about that? How are we going to show that in this kind of a service? What kind of music might you want to have that's part of this? Where is it that your remains are going to be placed forever? Whether it's going to be burial in a cemetery, or if the ashes come back home, what's your plan for them too? Because for a lot of people, they don't ever have a plan for these ashes and they end up sitting in the house indefinitely. 22% of all households have ashes of either a pet or a person in them that they used to love.
Wow. That's a whole different show.
See, you never thought you'd get into this, did you?
I didn't, but you know what's funny is that as part of my parents' planning, I'm just going to move over here for a second. They did something very nice, which I super like. So the group that we used gave my sister and I this little piece that has a candle, and I can change the candle out, but there's just a little bit of my dad there.
Oh, nice.
Just a little bit of his remains. And it's cool to have dad just sitting. I don't know what it is.
Yeah.
Just having just a little bit of, so I'm doing it on purpose today, Scott, with you and me sitting here in the basement.
With mom upstairs, of course.
With mom upstairs. Yes. But to your point too, you know, we just lost my aunt as well. I was speaking with my cousins, and for a while, Scott, he was taking Aunt Jean's ashes with him everywhere he went. And that wasn't healthy.
That isn't healthy. There are certain things, and a good funeral director is going to work you through a plan for those ashes that have some kind of permanence to them. Because keeping them at home and not making a decision is not that. It's your brain feels like there's unfinished business, and there is.
Yeah.
And so coming up with a permanent plan is important. Whether that plan means we're going to incorporate those ashes into the lake, the river, into the backyard, or we're going to bury them at the cemetery, or we're going to keep some on our desk. That permanence, that kind of an idea for that is important. And all of that is addressed in this whole pre-need planning process.
Well, and I got to tell you the upside of this, which I knew cerebrally some of it, but I did not get the emotion of it until I went through it with my parents. The fact that my mom and dad sat down and did exactly what you're talking about. Yeah. The day after my dad died, which I thought was pretty easy. So hooray to mom for going, let's do this now.
Always a woman who starts it. Yeah.
Always.
Yeah.
Because I would have delayed that,
yep.
You know, for weeks and weeks. But she took my sister and I, or she went with my sister and I drove back to the funeral director. We sat in her office. Her name was Angel, and Scott, she was such an angel. This woman was so good at her job. And she just sat down and said to a very emotional woman, my mom, here's what you already did. You already took care of this. 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 She had almost no questions for my mom at the time when she was most vulnerable and didn't want to think. Scott, it was so amazing. I think even for you as a funeral director, it's got to be a hell of a lot more fun pre-planning than sitting with my mom the day after my dad died if they'd done nothing.
I met with a lady yesterday who's 93 years old. And I told her, I said, you know, my mom made it to 95. And she says, well, then I'll see you in 2 years. We had such a great conversation, but she was planning her own. She was there with her daughter. Her daughter, this is very predictable. Her daughter was very concerned about the money. How much is it going to cost? All that kind of stuff. Mom wants to have a party. She says, I'm a party girl and I want to have a party. It wasn't really about the money. I'm not going to take advantage of that. But mom's very clear on what she wants. And it was an education for her daughter to hear this too. Now that when they walked out, the daughter says, Mom's going to get what she wanted to have happen. And we gave her a complete breakdown of the cost, an itemization of the cost, and she decided to fund it too, which is to put money aside into, in our state, we put it into an insurance policy. And that insurance policy gains little dividends to try and keep up with inflation. We've got other methods to do that as well. So that at the time of death, not only is it all planned, but it's paid for.
It's already done.
Yeah.
We talked about this a lot when I was a financial planner, was just, you have this money, your kids can do stuff with it when you pass away, or you can spend it the way you want to. You take your family on a vacation. You can make life easy on them.
Joe, here's what's really likely to happen though. We think like that because that's the way we want it to end for us. The truth is that the last couple of years of our life are usually very expensive. And people who have a nest egg, have the money that they think is going to take them to the finish line and distribute some money to the kids, all of a sudden gets eaten up in care. And if this money is put aside for the funeral, it is untouchable. If a person applies for medical assistance from the state or the county, however it's determined in your home, this money is untouchable. And so it's a way of actually distributing money to your kids in advance because it doesn't come out of their pocket.
There's one more benefit to pre-planning that I like. So I'm going to take the daughter side for a second.
Yeah.
Everyone, to go back to the beginning of our chat, everyone's worried about getting ripped off.
Yep.
When you are less emotional, pre-planning, you're looking at the itemization sheet, I think you're much more in your right brain and less likely to be taken advantage of because you pre-plan too. So from the daughter's point of view, I think the daughter's happier too, because she feels very comfortable with what's going on.
Well, and the daughter is looking at a value equation like everybody is and says, well, gee, that's a lot of money. Okay, let's break it down and let's see where, if you want to save some money, let's look at other areas to do that. But the way in which it was suggested that we could save some money were not things that were agreeable to Mom because Mom wanted that cushion in there for the bar. She wants beer and wine served at her services. So
I have never heard of that. I still have, I can't, that is fantastic.
Even my priest knows that I've got a couple of beers in the fridge all the time. So he'll come rapping on the door from time to time. But it has made, I've been in the profession for a long, long time, since 1980. And I am more engaged in the profession now than I ever have been, simply because of how we're reaching out to people and the options that we're providing people. We provide people with 3 more options than most funeral homes even talk about or even are aware of.
It's such an important time of life, and it gets closer for me too. And for all of us, we're all terminal, right? Somebody said that to me once.
We're all packing our bags. It's just a matter of when we depart.
That's right. As I mentioned, Scott does have a book on this, as you can tell from just talking to him. This was a Amazon #1 bestseller, What to Know Before You Go. It is not a thick book. It's a very, very thin book. But like I said to Scott before we started talking, I just love how packed it is with information. I assume it's available on Amazon since it says Amazon #1 bestseller.
It is.
We'll link to it on our show notes as well. Do you have another resource, Scott, that we should point to?
Well, yeah, you're welcome to look at our website. It's MuellerMemorial.com. And if you have any interest in green burial options, sustainable kind of options, you can go to Interra Burial, INTERRA, InterraBurial.com. And that will give you a lot of information on what's new in that realm as well.
Well, I'm a little disappointed, my friend, because our job on Halloween normally is to make Halloween scarier.
Oh.
Hopefully we made it a lot less scary for people. So,
well, I hope so. Everybody who comes in and pre-plans has the same reaction. It is the same feeling that you do when you do your taxes. You put it off as long as you can. You hate doing it. But when you're done, there's a great relief. The one thing about planning your funeral, it's one and done. Taxes, every year.
Hey there, stackers. I'm Joe's mom's neighbor, Doug, and with all the positivity here on our Halloween episode, I was thinking that it was time for the adult in the room to start writing these shows. And since they're not here, maybe I should step it up, huh? So here we go. It was a dark and scary night.
Oh, that's original.
What do you mean? It's already been used? All right. Okay. All right. Wait, let's try this one. Do not ask for whom the bell tolls.
Oh boy.
Why are you laughing? You're telling me that one's taken too? All right, I'll come up with something. But let's get you a scary line that helped a rare horror film make an appearance at the Academy Awards back in 1991. Which film included this line? I'd love to stay and chat, but I'm having an old friend for dinner. I'll be back right after I ask ChatGPT to come up with something original for an opening for me. Hey there, stackers. I'm seriously good writer and a guy who can write creepy, but who's definitely not creepy, Joe's mom's neighbor, Doug. Today, we're celebrating Halloween in appropriate fashion with trivia about classic movie lines that won their writers tons of Benjamins. It turns out they also didn't have ChatGPT to help them, and even if they did, when I asked ChatGPT for a scary stacking Benjamin story, you know what it said? And I'm not kidding. Here we go. As the clock struck midnight in Joe's mom's basement, the sound of clinking coins echoed through the walls, but no one had touched the piggy bank in years.
Wow.
Dun,
Wow.
dun,
Wow.
da-da-da,
That's Edgar Allan Poe-esque.
da-da-da.
Maybe ChatGPT needs a job.
Okay. I got to admit, I mean, it's pretty good, right?
Yeah,
Pretty
that's
good.
not bad.
Pretty good. Coins in the walls. But it's slightly less good than a line from a film that not only scored lots of Benjamins from stackers' wallets over the years, it also won 5 Academy Awards. The classic line was, I'd love to chat, but I'm having an old friend for dinner. Was uttered by the Sir Anthony Hopkins playing Hannibal Lecter in the now classic movie Silence of the Lambs. And now, 2 guys who are here with the classic second half of this podcast, Joe and OG.
Hey, huge thanks to Scott Mueller. Doug, I know you went through this with your dad as well. It's not a time when you want to be making a lot of decisions.
No, and it's funny, you know, my dad was ill with cancer for a number of years. We had plenty of time to plan some of those. I think my parents did the big picture stuff, but the details of like what happens when you're at the funeral home and you need to make some of those decisions, they did not do that. And my dad was a guy who was very, you know, he didn't stand on pomp and circumstance. He wasn't into all of that kind of ceremonial stuff. And we're sitting in the funeral director's office. We knew that my father wanted to be cremated. We know that he wanted to do that, but we hadn't really talked about caskets and that sort of thing. And as my brothers and I and my mom are sitting there and the funeral director asks if we want a casket, I saw one of my brothers kind of a look on his face and he kind of shrugged his shoulders like, you know what? You only do this once. That was just, it's my brother. He's a funny guy, but I could tell that was what, and I'm like, hold on. He's being cremated. Why are we buying and Dad wouldn't want this. Dad would say, do the cheapest thing you can do. And, you know, but we almost succumb to that emotional side of this is a big deal. This only happens once.
YOLO.
We should go all out.
Oh,
Right.
wait.
YOLO.
No,
exactly.
probably not.
And normally I have at times thought that same way, but I caught myself realizing this is not the time to spend money when I'm just going to cremate that person.
Well,
And
by the
so-
way, not to put any stank on it, because as Scott and I were talking about this, for some people, that's a big moment. Yeah, I mean, it's a big family moment. It's not about the person that died. It's about everybody
Right.
else. And maybe, you know, what do we talk about? The coffin with their favorite football team all over it. You know what I mean? It's a big
Except
part of
that
their identity.
We weren't having an open casket funeral
Oh,
for
yeah.
everybody to see. So nobody was ever
Yeah,
going
what
to
are we
see
doing?
this. Right.
Hey, let's buy that and burn
Can I
it.
borrow one?
Exactly.
How about who's coming in at 4? Can we just use them?
Exactly.
We'll be out of here by 3:30. Just pre-stage the 4 o'clock guy. It'll be our little secret.
How about the idea of turning this into a celebration? I know, OG, you have a story, I think, about a friend.
Well, yeah. I mean, I have a friend who his father passed away. He was sick, and you know, it's been a while since we've been to a funeral, and wanted to support him and his family. And this guy was pretty influential in the community over his lifetime, and it's always nice to see, you know, a full service. You know what I mean? Like you just go, oh, this guy meant something to a bunch of people, and I was thinking about my friend, and they mentioned that he was going to have a little time to talk, you know, during the service. And it was obviously, there's some somber moments, but when he started talking, all he did was tell stories about his dad and like the funny things that he remembered. And I don't remember how long it was, probably a solid 20 or 25 minutes. When he got done, people were crying because they were laughing.
That's great.
I mean, he did such a great job of focusing on all the stuff that everybody remembered about his dad. And I was just thinking, I don't want to say I was taking notes, but I was like, this is the way it should be done. Because you've certainly been to funerals and it's really sad and somber and, just like the worst day imaginable for you or for your family or whatever. And you're like, this is the worst thing that I could spend any time doing. I don't ever want to do this again. And then going to this, I was like, okay, this is obviously still a really sad day, but he's focusing on all the cool stuff that he remembers from his pops and the stuff that people in the community laughed about and remembered as well. It's almost like those, have you seen those, like sometimes they go a little viral, like the obituaries where people will write like the old battle axe finally, it's like, when they write the funny obituaries and it's like, that's a good idea. If that's your loved one's style, it doesn't have to be like, it should be how they are. Like Scott was saying about playing the music that they listen to and stuff like that. It's like, could you imagine walking to a funeral home and hearing like little Guns N' Roses, Sweet Child of Mine? You're like, whoa.
And somebody offers you a drink the second you walk in. Hey, you want something? We got a full bar back here.
What are you guys doing on Tuesday? This is a great idea. Drinking on Mondays at 1. This is awesome.
I don't even know the people who died this week. I'm just hanging out at the funeral home. Yeah, huge thanks to Scott. And what a great time to have Scott on. Halloween. Hey, time for a headline.
Hello, darlings. And now it's time for your favorite part of the show, our Stacking Benjamin's headlines.
Our headline today comes to us from Fox Business. And this was actually a topic, OG, that was requested by a stacker. Said, you know what? I'm dealing with umbrella liability insurance issues right now. Do I get an umbrella policy or not? This piece is written by Catherine Pomeroy. You're thinking?
I was thinking about the Rihanna song. Under the umbrella.
Ella. I gotcha. Your homeowner's insurance policy should include these 3 items, according to financial experts. Number 1, replacement cost. If you're going through your homeowners or your renter's policy, replacement cost is a big thing. Explain
versus residual cost.
What's the difference here, OG?
Well, the difference is very simple. It's like you have a TV hanging on your wall that you bought 4 years ago that was $1,000. Well, guess what it's worth today? 150. And they'll give you 150 because that's the value of it today. But it doesn't replace the fact that you're missing a TV on the wall. So replacement cost puts a new TV on your wall. They don't make 4 years ago model. So they'll give you this year's model that's the same size and specs or whatever. So replacement is important.
Second thing on your checklist, special personal property endorsement. I know that when our house was robbed, there was a cap amount on any jewelry that Cheryl had. And thank goodness we didn't have any jewelry that was more than that. But if you've got any expensive art in your house or any expensive jewelry in your house, whatever it might be, you need a special endorsement on all those things.
I think this is one of the bigger mistakes people make is they have that endorsement, but then they don't itemize it. I think you have to look at your carrier and see how they want it. They're not just going to take your word for it that you have an antique firearm collection or grandma's engagement ring that's worth $1 bajillion or something like that. You have to go get appraisals and receipts, and you have to do all those things to document this is the thing I'm insuring. I'm insuring these earrings that I bought for this special occasion, or I'm insuring this firearm that's been in the family for 100 years. And here's the value, and here's how it was appraised. And then you have to submit that to the insurance company too, to make sure that they know that that's on the policy. Because like you said, even with the special endorsement, it'll have a cap until you actually say, here's how much stuff I want to, or here's a list of items that I need to. And watches, that's another one. These numbers are relatively small, $2,000 or $5,000 in aggregate. I mean, it's not unheard of for a woman to have an engagement ring that's $5,000, $7,000, $10,000. It's not unheard of to have a watch that's $2,000, or a set of earrings, or grandma's something or another, or artwork, like you said. So if you have anything that's above those minimums, that's what having an agent, I think, really helps with, versus 1-800 call flow or whatever, not to throw a lot of shade on that because you just get 800 number. Having an agent to say, like, explain this to me so that I know what I have to do. Like, okay, I've got the coverage, but what do I have to do next? Is it simple enough just to say, here's the receipt from the watch I bought for a special, I got as a 25th anniversary gift for my spouse. Is that good enough? Or do I have to go get it appraised? Or who do I have to have it? You know what I mean? So every company is going to be different on how they deal with that.
Yeah, I think it is so important. And another thing that I didn't know, it's not on this list, but serial numbers of your tech items. Get the serial numbers. Your televisions, your computers, have all those. Just go around and take pictures very quickly, because the thing that's going to happen, the criminal is going to turn it into a pawn shop, or is going to attempt to, and immediately you might be able to get your stuff back fairly quickly, because that's very common that they try to pawn it off. Third is an umbrella policy, which is exactly what our stacker was asking about. What do you think about umbrella? Ella.
Sorry. Can anybody say that word without thinking of that song?
Yes.
Oh, not anymore.
Before today.
After today, you mean? Can anyone after now think of the word umbrella?
I'm saying
Ella,
yes. Before
Ella,
today, I could. After today, I probably can't.
Okay.
I still will be able to never think about it.
You'll find a way.
Yeah.
Find a way.
I know what album Doug's getting for Christmas. Put that on your Spotify wish list. Little Rihanna.
I love how this podcast marriage is just three guys talking about what can I do that would really get up under their craw.
Wreck his day for the next 24 hours.
That's how I spend my Monday, Wednesday, Friday. What can I do that will make sure that OG and Doug have just a crappy morning?
Hate me for the next few hours.
I'd like to talk to you about annuities.
And when we're done with that, I've got a timeshare I was thinking about. Not Doug. What am I talking about? OG umbrellas. Doug can talk umbrellas too if he wants to, but OG, what do you think of umbrellas?
I mean, so here's the thing. If you have house insurance and you have car insurance, those two things come with liability attached to them, some sort of liability coverage. And the liability coverage is something that happens on your property or with your property that causes some sort of issue to somebody else. So you get in a car wreck, and obviously your car is going to be covered. Their car is covered. And then there's maybe some other stuff that happens. Maybe they have to go to the doctor's office and you have to pay for that. Or there's some sort of injury. You own your own home and you don't shovel the sidewalks and somebody slips and falls. Or, the dog, which is a big one. The dog bites somebody. That's a huge liability. You have a pool in your backyard. Anything that can cause potential issues to other persons, that is a liability that you have. And those coverages, that house and car insurance have liability coverage attached to them. So you'll see it expressed in numbers. It'll say, well, I have $300,000 of liability. And what you're saying is any expense that the insurance or that the other person has up to $300,000 will be covered by my insurance, assuming that they find me at fault with that issue. So umbrella coverage covers you above that number. So you say, well, I'm going to have the first $300,000 is covered for my auto insurance, or the first $500K is covered by my auto insurance. But if they sue me for $2 million, which is their right to do, you can sue anybody for any reason. Doesn't mean that you have to pay. But let's say that you lose that judgment, you are at fault in that accident, and you did cause a bunch of injuries. That gap could be your responsibility. And what umbrella insurance does is it adds more liability coverage beyond what your stated policy amounts are. So some people might have $1 million of liability, $2 million liability, $5 million of liability or umbrella insurance. You just have to talk to your agent about what you think your risk is. And then also, where you are financially. I think the higher net worth that you have, the higher umbrella coverage you need. I mean, if you have a $10 million net worth and you live in a $4 million house and you have a big giant pool with a bunch of dogs and all the neighbor kids are over all the time, there's a lot of things that can poke a hole in that boat. And by the way, you've got $10 million. So guess they're like, oh yeah, I'll just sue them for whatever and they'll settle. Well, if
start from what am I trying to protect?
Yeah, exactly. The higher your net worth is, the higher you might consider that. But this is a great question for an agent also. Like, what am I looking at here?
Often we look at affordability. And the first thing, OG, to your point, often agents will point you toward discounts that you're eligible for that you might not have known about, where often when you call up the 1-800 number, they won't know. So get all the discounts that you can that will help pay for it. Another way that a lot of people are able to do this is they just because they've done it the same way forever, they still have these very low deductibles. And if you've got a fairly high net worth, you're not worried about $1,000 or the first 1% of your home value or whatever it might be. You're worried about the big catastrophic thing. So assuming that you have a sizable emergency fund, begin self-insuring by making those small risks yours instead of the insurance companies. Jack up your deductible. Do not do this when you don't have an emergency fund. And by the way, as you know, OG, these are people that always jack up their deductible, or people go, well, I can't afford all this insurance. So the way I'm going to do it is I'm going to start taking some chances. And it isn't insurance anymore. It's Las Vegas, because I'm just hoping that things go well. And that's when the wheels come off the bus, is when you do that. But if you have the money set aside, why not raise your deductible so that you're able to lower the cost of the primary coverage and then use that savings to buy the additional insurance, which better fits your need? That'd be the umbrella, because the umbrella policy is not that expensive.
I mean, for the amount of coverage, no, but the likelihood of using it, again, insurance is all priced on magnitude and risk, right? So it's like, why can I get a $5 million umbrella policy for $2,000 a year, yet my house insurance is $12,000 a year? Like, because, it's the likelihood of you using that $5 million of umbrella coverage is really, 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 really low. That's why it's not likely to happen, which is a good thing, right? That you want to pay for the risk. And I think what you said about increasing the deductibles is deciding how much of the risk you want to transfer to a third party, and to your point, it's like, I'm going to eat the first 1,000 of a car claim, or I'm going to eat the first 2,000 of a car claim, or I'm going to eat the first 1% of my house value. That's me. And I'm going to transfer the other 99% to the insurance company. In our situation, I have a car loan, a really low interest rate. So I was happy to have it, but the lending company won't let me have a deductible higher than 1,000. And so finally I went back and forth and I said, if I keep 2,000 in a savings account that's restricted, that, I'm happy to just let it sit there. Will you let me go to 2,000 on the deductible? And they said, well, if you put it in an account that's secured that you can't touch until the loan's paid off, we will let you go to 2,000. It was a credit union who had the loan, so they had the ability to kind of make it up on the spot. I was going to do that anyway, right? To your point, I need to have that 2,000 set aside anyway for an emergency in case the car does get wrecked. I'm on the hook for the first 2,000. So here, you guys hold on to it. I'll earn interest. That's fine with me. And I can change the deductible a little bit higher. So a great, especially nowadays, there's a lot of stories about different areas of the country that are having some pretty wild insurance pricing increases. This is the number one go-to. If you've got a healthy cash reserve, go back and look at your deductible for all the things and see if it's surprisingly how fast it moves by changing that deductible from $250 to $500, from $500 to $1,000, or $5,000 to 1% for your house or something.
Big thanks to the stacker that sent in this topic. I apologize. I did not have her name right in front of me, but we had a great conversation about this. And I was like, you know what? It is a good time. And especially on Halloween, you don't want to get the ugly surprise of my insurance doesn't do what I want it to do. If you want more about insurance, tomorrow we're going to have our special Halloween episode of the 201 newsletter. So sign up for that, stackingbenjamins.com/201. And Kevin Bailey's going to dive even more into this topic. If you're not here, though, because you're worried about your insurance, the way Doug says insurance planning.
The emphasis is on the sure. Like, sure, we'll pay your claim.
I think it's pronounced emphasis. It's emphasis. If you're not worried about that, you're worried about the fact that nothing's dovetailing, your financial plan really not existent. Well, OG and his team are taking clients. So head to stackingbenjamins.com/OG. That's the link to his team's calendar. And it's the first step toward, taking all this stuff and making it dovetail in 2025 and beyond. Can't believe I'm saying 2025 now. Oh, wow. Hey, last thing I want to do before we ask Doug to put a bow on this is our TikTok minute, because we got a very special one here on our Halloween episode. This is something scary, which is when we shine a light on a TikTok creator. That's very scary.
It's always scary. You never know what you're going to get.
Sometimes they're brilliant. Sometimes they're air quotes brilliant. Doug, is this TikToker going to make a good point or not today?
Yeah, I think all of the nation's best scholars are disseminating their information on TikTok, so it's going to be incredible.
While I may argue that point, Doug, I will say that in this particular instance, this TikToker has created or has thrown back to an old video of one of, I think, America's favorite comedians, Mitch Hedberg. And Mitch Hedberg is talking about.
Who the hell is Mitch Hedberg?
Are you kidding me? You don't know Mitch Hedberg? Mitch Hedberg is
1968? No, I don't know.
Oh my goodness, 1990s. Yeah, big time 1990s.
Which is how you know he's not one of America's favorite.
What are you talking
Carry
about?
on.
Really?
I mean, the math suggests that I was 13 in 1990. Yes.
Well, anyway, Mitch Hedberg really laying some truth on some of the gift giving we're going to see in the fourth quarter.
Okay.
I think a gift certificate is a bull gift. You know? What's a gift certificate? You take money that was good everywhere. And you ruin it, you know? Just give me the 20. It was a universal gift certificate. You just want to dictate where I shop.
Okay, that's pretty funny.
That's really good.
I think Mitch nails it again.
It gave me a good idea for a gift, though, because you could say, I got you a gift certificate to anywhere.
That's exactly it. Give somebody a $20 bill.
Isn't that like what a Visa gift card is? A gift certificate to anywhere?
Which
is also another stupid way of giving money.
Oh, it's so bad.
It's like, here's a credit card. You have to keep track of how much is on it. Right. And there's no way for you to know unless you call an 800 number and type the 16-digit code in. Then it will tell you $12.37. And you're like, cool.
Great.
How am I going to do that?
Thing's got to sit in my wallet.
Yeah. And at some point you're throwing it away because it's worth 72 cents and you're not going to try to like piece together your payment methods at the grocery store.
You just want to dictate where I shop.
I can't believe we haven't used that before. That's genius.
It's so brilliant. I was so proud of that because it was a TikTok minute that Stacker Lucy sent me that maybe changes my mind about some of these TikTokers. All right, Doug, let's put a bow on this special episode. What should be on our to-do list today?
Well, Joe, first, take some advice from Scott Mueller. Want to un-horror your family's funeral arrangements? Pre-plan that stuff. Second, the best horror story is the one you avoid from the beginning. Check on your homeowners and renters coverage. Add an umbrella policy if you're able. You won't regret it. But the big lesson? Don't let Joe's mom tell you Halloween jokes. Seriously, I mean, here's a real conversation we just had. If I had to live through this pain, so do you. So right before we started the show, she says to me, "Hey, Doug, I have some skeleton puns. They're very humorous." I'm like, oh, God, please, please, God, no. And she's like, oh, yeah, I got more. I have some vampire puns, too, but they suck. I'm like, my God, why is this happening to me today? Like, you guys always make me go up there and get stuff out of the kitchen, and she traps me with this crap. You listen to this.
Better you than me.
Yeah, she also says, how do you fix a broken jack-o'-lantern? You use a pumpkin patch.
Oh, wait.
I know. Yeah. No, it wasn't even good enough for that. And then, why are ghosts bad at lying? Because you could see right through them.
Oh, my God.
Horrible, right? So horrible. But she kept going. What do you get when you drop a pumpkin? Squash. Uh-huh. I'm like, lady, just stop. And she said, why did the ghost go to the bar? To get some booze.
Oh, gee, almost cracked a smile there.
Oh, my God. And then she goes, oh, what does the vegan zombie eat? And I didn't actually get this one at first. She says, grains.
Oh, my God.
Is that like a play on brains or something?
Yes, I believe so. I don't know. Ask her.
So bad. I couldn't take any more, but she kept coming at me like she was like a monster in a movie. She just kept coming at me. She goes, what do you call an empty hot dog? A Halloweenie.
Oh.
Yeah. To which I said, hey, I'm out. And I'll say to you, stackers, happy Halloween and be safe. Thanks to Scott Mueller for helping us celebrate Halloween by getting our final expenses in order. You'll find Scott at MuellerMemorial.com. And, of course, we'll also share a link in the show notes at StackingBenjamins.com. This show is the property of SB Podcasts, LLC, copyright 2024, and is created by Joe Saul-Sehy. Joe gets help from a few of our neighborhood friends. You'll find out about our awesome team at stackingbenjamins.com, along with the show notes and how you can find us on YouTube and all the usual social media spots. Come say hello. Oh yeah, and before I go, not only should you not take advice from these nerds, don't take advice from people you don't know. This show is for entertainment purposes only. Before making any financial decisions, speak with a real financial advisor. I'm Joe's mom's neighbor Doug, and we'll see you next time back here at the Stacking Benjamins Show.
OG, what's happening with you this Halloween?
Well, as previously mentioned, I am just a figment of your imagination this week, as I am still elbow deep in everything pineapple and rum, and I will magically reappear on November 1st. So that's what's going on.
But you have an annual Halloween tradition here.
I do have my favorite Simpsons episode of all time.
While you're queuing that up, we have a Halloween tradition we've talked about here, which is our friends Rick and Stella invite people over. And
Stella!
You can't say Stella without doing that, by the way, even to her face.
It's like Umbrella.
Absolutely. So
Umbrella.
So they put up a big screen outside and we watch a horror movie, and we've watched Cocaine Bear. Like, they have to be really bad.
They're so bad.
So this year, in the spirit of that, I will play you a preview. This was today's feast we just did yesterday, and this is called Mad Heidi. People need to look up the Heidi controversy with the NFL. We were talking about the NFL the other day. Look up the Heidi controversy. Mad Heidi, by the way, as this comes up, the original Heidi, this cheesy movie about a girl in Switzerland. So now, though, Switzerland is being ruled by a new dictator, and Heidi isn't having any of it. But this is Mad Heidi.
Ah, peaceful Switzerland. Beautiful mountains. Delicious cheese. And, of course, Heidi.
Go, Peter! I love you, baby girl.
But you've seen nothing yet.
Yes, citizen. Today, we shall celebrate Switzerland's new order. Gentlemen, world domination. To world domination. This man has been charged with the production of illegal dairy products.
Now, the girl from the Alps is back. With a vengeance. Get ready for action. Beautiful Swiss girls. Swiss Army katanas. And, of course, fondue boarding.
I love the smell of cheese in the morning.
I love the smell of cheese. So this guy who's now the dictator runs a huge cheese factory in Switzerland, as you do. And they make tons of Swiss cheese jokes as people are dying. They become Swiss cheese, of course. By the way, her boyfriend, you heard the name Goat Peter. You might not have heard his full name, but her boyfriend is Goat Peter. Goat Peter makes illegal goat cheese because you can't have cheeses that aren't made by this conglomerate. They ask him, by the way, why his cheese is so great. And he says, happy goats, happy cheese. And he winks, which is just absolutely horrible. If you're lactose intolerant, you're an enemy of the state. And of course, the spirit of Switzerland comes to help teach Heidi how to defeat this evil. I got to tell you, this movie, pick all the bad things from any Halloween horror movie, they're all here. I mean, this movie is so bad, it's brilliantly awful because they did all of this on purpose. I mean, zombies, people being killed in the worst way possible, the worst puns of all time. Fantastic movie. Absolutely horrible movie. That's so bad it's good. Mad Heidi. And with that, you got it queued up, OG?
Oh yeah. I mean, it's hard to beat that, honestly. That's
you can't beat Mad Heidi.
Just sounds like the worst hour and 50 minutes of my life. I long for the time that I have so much time in my day that I can just piss it away on a movie
Once
like that.
A year at Rick and Stella's house, I laughed my head off for about an hour and a half. Cocaine Bear was the same. Just amazing.
I actually didn't even laugh at Cocaine Bear.
I thought it was so brilliant.
That movie was, I'm good with the whole notion of let's just go so bad that it gets hilarious. I don't think Cocaine Bear went far enough.
You didn't think it went far enough? Oh my
No.
God, I love Cocaine Bear. I thought that
you guys are like really
so bad.
I mean, you're just painting a picture of what future financial independence will look like for me, to have so much time to just fill with nonsense that you can debate the merits of a movie called Cocaine Bear, which I didn't even know existed until you just mentioned it 3 times.
But hold on. What intellectual greatness are you about to share with us?
Well, I mean, some people might say the best intellectual greatness, actually.
I thought he was going to say, before he plays it, Doug, I thought he was going to say, because financial independence is, I don't have to sit and talk to you two idiots about Cocaine Bear and Mad Heidi and The Blackening and Tucker and what's his name fight evil.
I mean,
Carlson.
This is probably some of the best writing ever conceived by man.
Here we go. Happy Halloween, everybody.
The Raven. Once upon a midnight dreary,
while I pondered, weak and weary, over many a quaint and curious volume of forgotten lore, while I nodded, nearly napping, suddenly there came a tapping, as of someone gently rapping at my chamber door.
"'Tis some visitor,"
I muttered,
"tapping at my chamber door. Only this and nothing more."
Are we scared yet? Bard, he's establishing mood.
Ah, distinctly I remember. It was in the bleak December, and each separate dying ember wrought its ghost upon the floor. Eagerly I wished the morrow. Vainly I had sought to borrow from my books surcease of sorrow.
Huh?
Sorrow for the lost Lenore.
Oh, Lenore.
For the rare and radiant maiden whom the angels name Lenore, nameless here forevermore. And the silken, sad, uncertain rustling of each purple curtain filled me with fantastic terrors never felt before, so that now, to still the beating of my heart, I stood repeating,
"'Tis a visitor entreating entrance at my chamber door. This it is and nothing more."
Presently my soul grew stronger, hesitating then no longer.
"Sir,"
said I,
"or madam, truly your forgiveness I implore. But the fact is I was napping, and so gently you came rapping, and so faintly you came tapping at my chamber door that I scarce was sure I heard you."
Here I opened wide the door.
This better be good.
Darkness there, and nothing more.
Huh?
You know what would have been scarier than nothing? What? Anything!
Back into the chamber turning, all my soul within me burning. Soon again I heard a tapping, something louder than before.
"Surely,"
said I,
"surely that is something at my window lattice. Let me see then what thereat is, and this mystery explore."
Open here I flung the shutter, when with many a flirt and flutter, in there stepped a stately raven of the saintly days of yore. Not the least obeisance made he, not a minute stopped or stayed he, but with mien of lord or lady, perched above my chamber door, perched upon a bust of Pallas just above my chamber door, perched and sat, and nothing more.
"Though thy crest be shorn and shaven, thou,"
I said,
"art sure no craven, ghastly, grim, and ancient raven wandering from the nightly shore. Tell me what thy lordly name is on the nice Plutonian shore."
Quoth the raven,
Eat my shorts. Bart, stop it. He says nevermore, and that's all he'll ever say. Okay.
Then methought the air grew denser, perfumed by some unseen scent.
Stupid censer.
Swung by seraphim, whose footfalls tinkled on the tufted floor.
Wretch!
I cried.
Thy God hath led thee, by these angels he has sent thee, respite and nepenthe from thy memories of Lenore. Quaff, oh quaff this kind nepenthe and forget this lost Lenore.
Quoth the raven.
Nevermore.
Go! Be that word outside of parting! Burn her feet!
I shrieked up, starting.
Get thee back into the tempest and the nice Plutonian shore! No, leave no black plume as a token of the lie. Thy soul has spoken. Leave my loneliness unbroken. Quit the bust above my door. Take thy beak from out my heart and take thy form from off my door.
Quoth the raven.
Nevermore.
Take thy beak from out my heart and take thy form from off my door.
Quoth the raven.
Nevermore.
Why, you little...
Oh.
Come back here, you little raven! Go with me! Now!
Nevermore. 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 Nevermore.
And the raven, ever flitting, still is sitting on the pallid bust of Pallas just above my chamber door, and his eyes have all the seeming of a demon's that is dreaming, and the lamplight o'er him streaming throws his shadow on the floor, and my soul from out that shadow that lies floating on the floor shall be lifted nevermore.
Lisa.
My favorite thing on there says, if Edgar Allan Poe was still alive today, he'd be dropping the sickest rap album of all time.
He would be.
When the mailbox no longer shuts, when your credit report is 1,000 cuts, when investment dreams become nightmares, and clerks at stores admonish with glares, you can't afford that, can you? When vacationing days are far and gone, when pets disappear into the night, that's the time, the witching hour, when all your dreams your bills devour. It's all gone. A nightmare, it seems. But is it? It doesn't have to be, because on this night so dark and weary, the boys on the microphone are making merry, like three ghouls around the bowl, full of lost balance sheets, lizards, and toads, stirring briskly bubbles, charge cards, maxed and filled, insurances never obtained, forgotten wheels. On this night, so quiet and slow, like a horrible dream. It's the Stacking Benjamin Show.